Our drummer from the first night we were out started going out partying a lot and stuff, and he got sick, and he got everybody else sick. We all kind of picked it up one after the other. But it's a really common thing when you're on the road because you travel together, you're sharing hotel rooms, you're always shaking hands with people and stuff. It's common for everybody to get sick, or at least, a bunch of people get sick. But it's just like if you work a regular job, if you're sick, you can't you can't always call up and say, I can't come in, And especially when you're on tour, there's no such thing as calling in sick. Unless you have a broken bone or you're in the hospital, you have to go do the show no matter what. So that's how it is.
For example, if you feel sick, what do you do? What's like the ritual? What do you do to feel a little bit better before a show?
I usually drink a couple glasses of whiskey before I go up, whiskey and water, and I do that even when I feel good. But when I'm sick, it really helps a lot, to do that. And I try to just drink a lot of water during the day and get as much sleep as I can, which is tough on the road, but I do my best. And I just don't let it get me down. I try to concentrate on what I'm doing and paying attention to what's going on and not let it get the best of me. So far, it's been great. We did a bunch of dates in Brazil, and we're at the tail end of the shows here in Argentina. We did one in Uruguay last night, Montevideo, and that was a good show. So no complaints. We've had great crowds. People seem to be liking the stuff from the new record, which is always good. And we've had a good time. I think it's well documented at this point that we don't have any crazier audiences anywhere else in the world than here. This is pretty much the best it gets, for Ramone's music, and that's got a lot to do with why anytime I did something new or I started a tour, I always started here. The only thing that I could come up with was that people identify with the Ramones as a street band, as a street level band, as a kind of like the people's band, as opposed to like a big corporate band like the Rolling Stones or Aerosmith or U2, and that's not to put any of those bands down, but they're obviously part of a very big corporate machine. And I don't think people ever perceived the Ramones that way. I think people kind of just saw them as a punk rock band, and in fact that's what they were. They did everything on their own. They never received a lot of backing from their record company or radio or anything like that. And they just stayed out on the road touring, doing it themselves for 22 years.
Nothing okay. Why don't you get a hula hoop and do the creeping hop band?
Well, of course, it's a huge honor as a fan for them to even, for them to say anything positive, especially because Dee Dee was one of the greatest rock and roll songwriters of all time, and he was just a monster on stage. He was great on stage back in the day. But I think by the time I came to the band, their best years were behind them. They had slowed down a lot. The last time I had saw the band, I was really disappointed. Dee Dee wasn't even playing. He was just strumming all the strings on the bass open, and they shut him off at the board. And Johnny wasn't moving much, and it just seemed like they were going through the motions a lot. But the I guess the most common quote that I've heard said was that Johnny and Joey both said that when I came in the band, it was like a burst of energy for them, and that's that's great. I'm happy. If that was my only contribution, I'm happy because realistically, the end of their career could have been a lot more grim had they just continued doing what they were doing and then just stopped. But after I came into the band, there was media attention again. People started paying attention again. Mondo Bizarro was a record that kind of brought them back into the into the public eye after Brain Drain had pretty much not done much. People were excited, and the guys in the band were excited again. When I got up on stage, I was just going wild because I was in the Ramones, and I could tell that it definitely gave Johnny and Joey a little bit of a kick in the ass and got them moving, and that's what they really needed all along. They just needed something like that because they did still have some good years in them, as it's history now. But with my time in the band, they got another 6 years, and it went really well. And Johnny said to me that those was some of the best years that he had with the band.
I'm making monsters for my friends.
It was always weird all the way up to the end. It was always very strange to be to have to talk about money and pay and situations on the road and stuff, and talk to them and argue with them as somebody in the band, when realistically I was always a fan, and I just wanted to say, okay, whatever you say, but I knew I couldn't do that, and wouldn't be much of a man if I just let them say or do whatever they wanted. So it was always weird, and even up to the last couple of shows, knowing that the end was coming up and looking over and seeing Johnny and Joey there on my right, it was always bizarre. I just never lost that feeling of how am I up here? I used to be down there, but it was great. It was great, and the transition never was a full transition. I just kind of walked in two worlds there for the entire 7 years that I was there, and I just did the best I could. Yeah, that was the biggest shock. Was when I found out I got the audition, I thought I was joining a gang. That's what the Ramones always seemed to me as a fan, was more of like a gang. And of course that was the image from their younger days. But when I got there, of course, I learned very quickly it was a business, it was an organization. There was politics involved, and just like a family, arguments and fights and all that kind of stuff. But I just always kind of sat back and paid attention to what was going on, and tried to make sure that I didn't get too personally involved in the in their problems within themselves and with the business stuff. I always tried to maintain a little bit of distance, and that helped me to maintain respect for them and the whole situation. So it was difficult, but imagine if you were in the Ramones and all of a sudden you hear people fighting and arguing, blah blah blah. I just accepted it as it was just like being in a family. That's what it was like. Because like when you're a kid, the first time you hear your mom and dad yelling at each other and fighting, you get scared, you're shocked, you're like, what? But after a while, you just realize it's part of it. That's just how it is, and you go with it.
She looks so helpless, she looks so sad,
I enlisted in the Marine Corps for a couple reasons. Mostly because I had turned 21, and I just didn't have much of a future. I didn't have much going on. I was playing in bands and whatnot, but I worked in a military aircraft factory pretty much out of high school, and during the 80s, all of the companies that made military equipment left where I lived on Long Island. All the factories shut down, and there were no good jobs, and I was working, doing landscaping, and I just had nothing going on, and I was doing a lot of drinking, a lot of drugs, just a lot of stupidity. And my family is my dad's family is a military family, so my dad and all his brothers served. And when I looked at what was going on and where I was going, I was never good with book smarts. I was never good in school, and I knew college wasn't an option. And when I looked at what I had going on, I just, I knew I had to make a move. I wanted to get out of my hometown. I didn't want to live and die there. So I just decided I was going to enlist in the military, and I talked to a friend of mine and tried to talk him into it, but he didn't want to do it. But I knew I had to get out of there, and I enlisted.
I don't want to grow